Hi, everyone. Welcome to Children in the Fields Campaign's Live Thursday. My name is Kendra Mosley, and I'm joined today by Maria de Luna from Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. We are here to have a brief conversation about Hispanic Heritage Month, and we'll be happy to have you join that conversation. So please, if you are joining us, let us know where you're coming from, what your name is, what you do, and you know, in the meantime, I want to just give a few items of note. Um, First of all, I will not be doing these live Thursdays much longer. I've taken a new position within AFOP, so you will see me for the next few broadcasts, but then after that, I will be signing off. I've enjoyed this project very much, getting to know a lot of our partners and friends in the advocate community, bringing more attention to the issues that farm worker children face in a slightly different format. These Facebook Live videos were really popular at first because with COVID-19, people were all kind of sheltering in place and didn't have much better to do. But in the meantime, virtual presentations have um, proliferated. So we know there are a lot of demands on your time and on your screen. So we really thank you to those who are able to join us. Um, our Children in the Fields contest has ended, and this week was our final posts with all the winners and their essays and their artwork. We had so much wonderful art and essays contributed by Farmworker Children across the country, especially from California, and we loved each and every single one. So thank you to everyone who entered the contest, and congratulations to everyone who won. I don't think I have any announcements other than the usual one that if you've missed any of these broadcasts, I want to go back and check to see what you've missed. They're all available on our website. I'm going to, as I usually do, put that in the chat. And also, that is where you should go to keep track of our contest. You know, we always have a new one coming up. So next year in about April 2021, we will be announcing the new contest. So bookmark that website. It's very useful. So without further ado, I want to introduce Maria. She's here from Alianza Nacional De Campesinas. And we today, since it's Hispanic Heritage Month, wanted just to have a conversation about what that means to us and what that means to all of you, what that means to farm workers. And I wanted just to give a little background on the event itself. It started out as Hispanic Heritage Week back in 1968, but became a month, I think in 1988. So it's scheduled between September 15th, October 15th, because there are 8 different Independence Days for Latin American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Chile all celebrate between September 16th and October 12th, I think. So the month, sorry, I lost my place. It is an opportunity for us to talk about Hispanic heritage, but the term itself is under some debate, and we'll talk about that as well. But I wanted to start out by asking Maria. So Maria, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You've been on here before. We're happy to have you back. And tell us, you know, a little bit about Alianza and a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So my name is Maria de Luna with Alianza Nacional De Campesinas, National Farm Worker Women's Alliance. I am their National Policy and Advocacy Coordinator based in Washington, D.C. My background and how I came into this work is that both of my parents come from farm worker families. My mother's father was actually in the Bracero program for some time and then worked in small farms in Mexico upon his return. On my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was able to secure some acres of land, during the time that my father was growing up. which my dad helped work and work the lands of others. But due to a couple of administrative hurdles, um, he ended up losing those lands, which had a pretty big effect on my dad's life. And it was actually part of many reasons of why he immigrated to the US, um, where he's done a lot of manual labor work, and it's something that he continues to do to this day. Um, and so because of that, that is how I came into Alianza. I moved from Chicago, which is where I grew up, to come to DC, where I finished my master's. I got into movement work and have been doing that work, really as a way of honoring the work that my parents' families did growing up, their legacy, and really continuing to advance that cause, but on this end and here, on Capitol Hill.
That's great. So as you know, many farm workers come from a quote unquote Hispanic background.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the most recent number in the National Agricultural Workers Survey is something like 83%.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we like to highlight this month. But as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, a lot of farmers don't even identify as Hispanic. Like they come
Right.
here as Salvador, they come here as Nicaragua, and then this label
Right.
is slapped on them, and they're like, oh, okay. Like even when they're asked for the purposes of that survey, a lot of them don't even respond that they're Hispanic,
Right.
but they have to go back and look at where they're from and say, okay, you're from El Salvador, so therefore you are Hispanic. But it's a
Right.
very American term, very U.S. term, um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that. Like, um,
Right.
there's a lot of talk about changing the name of the month to Latinx
Mm-hmm.
Heritage Month. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think that Latinx as a term, right, which I think you've already kind of laid out, is a much more inclusive term, um, that really speaks to the vast swath of identities, and experiences and stories, um, that exist within Latin America and people of Latin American descent. I think that it's really it really speaks to this movement of decolonization, of working to um, you know identify people apart from these co-opted narratives that have been used by the power structures that be, and really acknowledging histories and stories that weren't always told, and that even now continue to be suppressed, and as a way of moving away from this sort of colonial understanding of gender, right? Of imposing the gender binary, which I think is hard because in Spanish, language is gendered, right? It's masculine or feminine. Um, and so Latinx and the use of X really in the Spanish language now is really an attempt to be much more inclusive and recognizing that there is more to the stories, to the peoples that come from um, this area in the world that we just haven't heard enough of, and that we really ought to be making the attempt to do that, to tell those stories, which is something that Alianza as an organization has focused on, right? We acknowledge the fact that farm worker women's experiences are unique precisely because they are farm worker women. And it's something that just has not gotten the attention within the farm worker movement, um, or even in some of the second, even third wave feminist movements, right? That there is, for us, an intent to apply an intersectional feminist framework to the work that we do. And that comes with centering the experiences of those who often are just cast aside.
absolutely. Sorry, is there an can you hear?
Sorry?
Can you
Yeah,
hear
I can
me?
hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
All of a sudden I started hearing an echo.
No, no worries.
um, yeah, and that was also on my mind. A lot of times, and I read a story about someone whose family moved from Puerto Rico to the mainland U.S. and they were racialized as Black, and then
Mm-hmm.
they moved to Southern California where they started working as farm workers, and then they were
Hmm.
racialized as Mexican, and
Hmm.
they were
Yeah.
neither of these things. So I also wanted to recognize, I think it's a large portion of the Hispanic farm workers are Mexican, um, and so a lot of times maybe that might even take over the celebration of this month, and um, I just wanted to be cognizant of that, and also to raise up the experiences of indigenous farm
Yes.
workers who
Yes.
oftentimes, even within a farm worker community, might be relegated, subservient status
Hmm.
because of the language barrier. They
Hmm.
might not speak Spanish fluently, and so they're at
Right.
a further disadvantage. Um, so yeah, I just
No,
wanted to
it's
be.
absolutely, those are really good points. I think um, even when we're talking about um, Mexican identity or even like nationalized identities, right? I think that we also need to be cognizant of the fact that even within that, there have been multiple histories and stories that just aren't often elevated, right? I think about um, the story that came out of um, the revolution in Mexico that tried to coalesce Mexicanidad, no, into mestizaje, which was sort of this, which was recognized as this mixing of European and indigenous people. The thing is, though, that that completely excluded um, Afro Mexicans, right? That only
Mhm.
very recently in the Mexican census um, were recognized as a category, right?
Hmm.
It completely erased, right? People of Asian descent that were also in Latin America and continue to be. Um,
Mhm.
and even within this idea of mestizaje, it still in many ways served to flatten indigenous identities, right? Because we need to be very cognizant that indigenous communities, even within Latin America, are still marginalized, are still underserved. And so, getting back to this idea of understanding Latinx identity as a much more comprehensive term and trying to reframe the month as Latinx Heritage Month, I think again speaks to wanting to really bring awareness to these other identities, other stories that just have not gotten the attention that they need, that they deserve, um, and how they have contributed, right, to the culture, to um, the history, the legacy, and again, being very cognizant of that as we work, right, to be actively anti-racist and decolonial.
Exactly. Um, my coworker Vasha is saying, if we can be more inclusive about what racism even is, and highlighting, like you said, the experiences of mixed
Absolutely.
Latinx, like
Absolutely.
Afro-Latinx. Um, so yeah, there's so many different um, identities under this umbrella of
Yeah.
Latinx, and
Yeah.
it's such a short time, to try to squeeze them all into just a month of. It
Right.
should be, and it is for us, for AFOP and for Alianza. It's a year-long constant thing of
Yeah.
raising these stories, elevating these
Mm-hmm.
stories. Um, but
No,
oh, I'm
definitely.
just curious, how growing up, did your family, or did you celebrate Latinx Heritage Month?
I think it's hard to say because when you grow up in an immigrant household with parents who are very much don't want to lose sight of their roots, almost every day is Latinx Heritage
Mhm.
Month, right? My mom instilled in me a love of learning and a love of reading, um, and always like to refer to some of the best known um, Hispanohablante authors, right? Of really getting into those novels that she treasured so very very much. And I think for my dad, learning about some of the greats in soccer, right? In either Mexico's team or just throughout Latin America, very much like a deep deep aficionado to it. And so I think it's hard to say when we recognized it because when you grow up in that the neighborhood that was also very much immigrant and first gen, um, every day you see it every day. You learn about your history. You continue to um, recognize that and recognize your family, your ancestors, the people who came here, and it's I think it's very much at the forefront, especially when you bring in this aspect of immigration,
Mhm,
right? Because it's very much in the forefront of those people who left, why they left,
mhm,
and what they left behind. And
mhm.
so I think for me, every day was that recognition and really trying to make right by the work and sacrifices that my parents made, that other families made, um, and continuing to do that.
That's wonderful. And I too was thinking that, this Latinx Heritage Month. Um, I was reading the history, and it was actually implemented by the Nixon and Reagan administrations. Like under their
Mm,
administrations, this month came to be, or the week, and then the month. So it was superimposed on the community that is like, well, this is who we are. Like, how
mhm.
are we now just confined to a month? Like, it's the same as for Black History Month. It's feels like it's still not given enough of airtime
Yeah, right,
in the dominant white culture that is just, oh, okay, wait, there's somebody else's experience over here that I should be
right,
paying attention to.
right.
um, so I do want to also talk about, if there's, you mentioned authors that you like to get into. Are there any specific ones that you'd like to mention that others?
I can, yeah, I mean, I think I can mention one in particular that I think really further cemented my love for literature, my love for reading, which was Sandra Cisneros' The House on Mango Street, which
Yeah.
is based actually on her growing up also in Chicago, in the south side of Chicago.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it was when I was growing up, I think I was reading it in like fourth or fifth grade, was the first time that it clicked in me. I'm actually reading about me. I'm actually reading about people like me. I'm reading about my family. Um, and so I think it was validating in that sense. And again, really just kept furthering my own interest in continuing to read and continuing to um, expand my learning about myself, my family's history, and the history of others around me.
I think I read that as well for high school. I had a wonderful English teacher, so I just put in a
Yeah.
link on the chat if anyone wants to go check out that book. There's a gazillion books. I mean, we can't even really get a fingernail
Right.
of all the
Right.
books that should be on your reading list. But how about famous people? Do you have any that you especially admire that are Latinx?
Um, I feel that there are people that I um, do respect and I have inspired me to a certain degree, but when I think of heroes, Latinx heroes, I often think about my family,
Hmm.
especially my mom, a woman who has been so incredibly resilient in the face of so much adversity. And I say this not to romanticize those experiences because what she went through was incredibly hard. Um, but I think what I admire most about her is that having gone through what she did, she worked so incredibly hard that I would not have those experiences, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't able to finish high school. She was literally about her last semester in, and her parents just couldn't afford it.
Wow.
And what she ended up focusing on me and instilling on me is that school was first and foremost, right? It was incredibly important, and she wanted me to have the career and the life that she had so wanted for herself,
Mhm.
um, and really just wanted to make sure that those sort of concerns wouldn't be an issue for me. I think about the women that I grew up with in my neighborhood in my hometown, um, who again have these incredibly rich stories of the things that they went through, the challenges that they faced, and that even then, you know, found a way to continue going. And again, I don't want to paint this in a rose colored lens, because I really, they wish, and I wish for them that they had that sort of sense of support um, that they provided for me.
Mhm.
But I think it's because they did not have that, that they valued it all the much more for the women who, like me, would come after them. And they made sure that the next generation of women would not have to go through what they went through.
And that rings so familiar. And because we just had the contest and I read so many of the new essays that came in, so many farmworker children care and admire, care about and admire their parents so deeply,
Yeah.
because they see every day the sacrifices that they make, they have to make,
Yeah.
um, which is why, you know, so many farm worker children end up working in the fields, because not because they're compelled to by their parents, although, you know, if there's something that needs to be bought that they don't have money for, they're like, well, you have to earn the money yourself, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
come and pick with me for a day and then you can buy XYZ.
Right.
But they see um, the pain, the back pain that, you know, that dad comes home with. Um, and this one young woman that we talked to, who'd only just started working in the apple fields and the apple orchards, like it was 3 months, you know, that she'd been on the job.
Yeah.
She's 12. And she's like, well, hopefully next year I'll grow a little taller so I can pick more apples.
Yeah.
So my dad doesn't have to do as much. You know, we can move
Mhm.
more quickly down the rows. And it's really this this value of um, supporting your family and
Yeah.
all being in it together that um, compels a lot of farm worker children to work in the fields. But
Yeah.
that education, that piece of education is so strong, like, and their parents, you know, emphasize it daily, like, you don't do what I do, don't follow in my footsteps, you've got to
Yeah.
have a better way. um and and a lot of them succeed, but then a lot of them don't, and those are the ones that we want to advocate for, you know, the ones
Yeah.
that make it.
No.
They're just a
Absolutely.
small percentage, and then the cycle continues for those that can't. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. And even the conditions in which they work. Um, we know that the conditions in which farm worker children work are vastly different from children working in other industries. That is a
mhm,
disparity that really comes out of the injustices in the fields in general, right?
exactly.
Which themselves are tied to this history of colonialism. They're tied to the history of slavery and um, of anti-blackness, of anti-indigeneity. And again, as we're recognizing Latinx Heritage Month and what it means to be part of the Latinx community, it's about acknowledging that history, those injustices, not losing sight of them, and ensuring that, as we speak about our community, that we're truly being inclusive, right? About those narratives, specifically the ones um, that have been erased, right?
Mhm,
Or rather, there have been so many attempts to erase them
yes.
that we really need to be mindful, we need to be cognizant, and continue to uplift those very same stories.
Mhm, exactly. Are there any? Is there anything happening at Alianza Nacional de Campesinas that you would like to mention? I know you said
Yeah.
that you've been very busy.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of things. So, um, we have a few campaigns running. Aliento a Familias Campesinas and de Campesinas o Campesinos a Campesinas y Campesinos. Um, the first is a campaign to provide masks for our member organizations, who then disperse them to their community members, and also encouraging them to create their own masks. So we sometimes even provide the materials and the equipment necessary to do that, to make those reusable masks that we know are going to be very, very important for farm workers and their families. The second one is to provide meals, specifically hot meals for farm worker families, and to try to connect them to valuable resources and information about how they can best protect themselves against COVID. Alianza is also working to provide funds for our member organizations who right now have seen a dramatic uptick in the people that they serve precisely because um, they have been left out of federal assistance. And so we are actively raising funds to make sure that they have enough resources to continue to provide um, the programs that they provide, right? Whether that's providing hot meals and basic necessities, whether that's providing legal resources, whether that's um, helping pay for rent and basic utilities, things of that nature. At the advocacy level, we're continuing to push for the inclusion of farm workers, of rural and immigrant communities, and really an overhaul of our food and farming system in the next COVID relief package. We know that most farm workers were largely excluded from the CARES Act and from previous federal legislative packages related to COVID. We know that they need urgent relief and that there needs to be greater attention to the food and farming system that I think has gotten um, slightly more on people's radars because of COVID, but we don't want them to lose sight of that once this pandemic um, is over, when that is. Um, and we're also raising awareness on our social media platforms about the work that we're doing, right? These campaigns, as well as trying to ensure that farm workers have access to mobile health clinics, which is again something that we're doing through the campaigns that we're doing, but also raising awareness for Domestic Violence Awareness Month for this month that started today. So those are a couple of things that we're doing. Our member organizations are continuing to do amazing work at the state level about ensuring that farm workers have the protections and support that they need. But we know that they can't do it alone. And so please check out our website, um, learn about the work that we're doing, and see how you can also continue to support farm workers as they're, facing increased risk of COVID, of climate change, and more.
Yes. And I put y'all's handle down in the little
Thank you.
banner at
Thank
the
you. I
bottom.
see that.
um, so everyone go check out Alianza. They are doing amazing work, and we've shared a few of their stories about sharing that COVID relief. I think people were in lines that lasted 4 hours long, for the food and other emergency support services that were being provided. And definitely the mobile health clinics are huge. People
Yep.
Don't have time to take off of work to go get tested, and they want to get tested, and it involves a lot of sensitive, like, coordination with
Yeah.
owners too,
And
because
building trust. Yeah.
yeah. So this is very important work, and we're very happy that you're um, in it with us, and we're
Thank you.
happy that you could join us today, Maria. I don't have
Yeah.
any further questions, but do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, just please keep in mind the needs and priorities of campesinas. Contact your representatives. Um, let them know that we need urgent pandemic relief for the food and farming system and for rural and immigrant communities. Alianza co-authored a letter precisely on this topic and sent it to Congress. We had a week of action. You can check out that letter and the toolkit that was created for that entire week of action on our website and on our social media accounts. Please continue to elevate that message. And please visit our website to see how you can support our work and the work of our member organizations.
And the website, Alianza, I had it up at one point. You know it off the top of your head?
It's Alianza Nacional De Campesinas.
.com?
Yep. alianzanacionaldecampesinas.org.
Org, there you go. Okay. I did miss one question. That was about whether or not there is a similar celebration in Latin American countries. And I would assume that it's mostly tied to each country's Independence Day, that there is no like pan-Latin celebration, since that's more of a US identity thing. but
Yeah, I mean,
feel free to chime
right. I mean, to my experience, none that I celebrated. That's not to say that they don't exist. But I think the things were that I was most familiar with growing up and that I still am are really like the local celebrations.
in.
So when I would go back to Mexico, right, like the fiestas de diciembre, which were always really, really nice because it's coming in for the holiday season, and then feria time, which is always a really, really good time. And it's something that, unfortunately, because of what's going on, had to be postponed this year. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, those are things that are close to heart. And I know that other people, especially people watching, probably have those celebrations close to heart. Um, and let's continue to just elevate that. Even though we're in this time where we're having to work remotely, I think cherishing those memories and the people that we used to celebrate them with, I think kind of keeps that same sort of celebratory sense.
In the community sense too. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
we are very much missing all of our members and partners that we normally would be seeing. Last week would have been our usual in-person conference, and we had
Yeah.
to postpone it and move it virtual. So that is happening now in early November. So we're missing all of our friends and partners,
Yeah.
and we're wishing that we could see you in person. But of course, health is paramount, and keep wearing those masks, keep
Yeah.
on keeping your distance.
Yes.
We'll get through this. Hopefully, we're in it for the long haul, but we'll get through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maria, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank you,
and
Ingrid.
we look forward to collaborating with you more in the future.
Absolutely. And congratulations again on the new job.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.